Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to share with you guys 10 books that kind of changed my life or just changed the way that I feel about reading, things that got me into reading and just really made me fall back in love with reading. So I have 10 books here for you guys. These are kind of like top tier books for me, like nobody can talk trash about them or I will fight you. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Starting off from when I was a child, I used to read a lot. I have a few favorites here that I used to love as a kid, Mary Downing Hahn, like the little ghost stories. But there's one book that stood out to me when I was a child that I read a couple of times. I have not read it as an adult, so I wonder how I would feel about it now, but that book is The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. This is just kind of like a sweet and tender book about this rabbit doll that is made out of china and the journey that he goes on. We start off with him being owned by this kind of wealthy young girl, and she goes on a cruise with her family and he gets thrown overboard, and then a fisherman picks him up and brings him home to his wife, and then he ends up in the trash somehow, and then a little boy living on the street finds him in the trash and takes him to his sick sister. And it's just kind of about his journey traveling around and experiencing love from all these other people, sometimes not so positive, like some bad things happen too. But I just really love it. And as a kid, like I was definitely one of those kids that had like a million stuffed animals. I still have a stuffed animal that I sleep with at night, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So this book really spoke to me just about the journey of like our toys and the love that they can feel in their lifetime, and I really enjoyed it. Now, as I started to get older, obviously my reading taste changed a bit, and there was definitely one series that really kind of ignited a spark in me and really made me love reading. I always loved reading, but like this one really did it for me. I'm sure you guys will know what I am talking about here, but of course it is the Hunger Games trilogy. I read the first book. My cousin had read the first book and she was really into it, and she was like, you have to read this. So she lent me her copy. I read it and was just like immediately like I finished the book, put it down, went straight to my mom, and I said, you need to buy me this book series. Like, I need it. I need to know. After the way the first book ended, I was like, I need to know what happens. Like, I genuinely felt like the world was going to end if I didn't get the second book to read right then and there. So my very kind mother put up with me, and she bought me the whole trilogy. So she is here. I love this series with my whole heart. I love all the characters so much. I love the movie so much. I haven't read it in quite a while, but I know that I read all the books before the first movie came out, and then in between each of the other movies coming out, I would read the series again. So before the next installment came out, I would read the series, and I haven't read it since the last movie came out, so maybe it's time to reread it again. I would absolutely love to reread it again because I love that series so much. So from there, we move into like my high school years. I read a lot in high school. I kind of always had a different book with me every couple of days. I read a lot of like really sad and really depressing stuff, a lot of stuff that had to do with mental health. So I read like the Crank series by Ellen Hopkins, which I have behind me. Pretty much every Ellen Hopkins books that she had out at that time period, I had read. I read things like Go Ask Alice, Winter Girls, Girl in Pieces, like all of that like really sad, really depressing stuff is what I was into. And then after high school, I don't know what happened, I just kind of like fell off of reading for a little bit and slowly started to make my way back into it, and then I discovered like the online community. So these are some of the books that I went through during that period when I was trying to get back into reading. I have All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood, which my friend had gave me a copy of, and I remember just being so entranced with this book. I actually just reread it in January because it had been a couple of years, and I wanted to see if did I love this book just because it was during that period where I was getting back into reading, or is it really a good book? And I think it's absolutely fantastic. Like, rereading it really solidified that this is a 5-star. This is a top tier book for me. Like, it is such a powerful story. The characters will stick with you forever, but it's definitely a controversial one. It deals with a very like inappropriate relationship between a young girl and an older man. So I don't expect everybody to love this book, and I don't expect everybody to understand why I love this book, but I just think everything is done so well. Like, the way it's written is so beautiful and so powerful, and just like the story of the characters and what they go through is a story that sticks with you forever. These are characters that I will never ever forget. Then we have I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This, I think, was like the first book that I really sat down and just read from beginning to end really, really quickly. And this is one of those books, I also reread this in January, but it's one of those books that it's like, blows my mind that I am reading words printed on paper and they are making me feel such strong emotions and such powerful feelings of like just being unsettled and freaked out. And just the way that Ian Reid writes, I think, is freaking fantastic. Like, I think he's a genius, and I think any of his books are not books, they are experiences. And once again, rereading this one in January really solidified it for me. Like, I will take no slander on this book. Like, anything less than a 4-star, your opinion's wrong. Sorry, that's just the way it is. This book is great. So, moving on now, like I said, I kind of found the online book community. I'm sure a lot of us did, and that kind of helped us get back into reading. But one of the books that I picked up because of that, sort of, I read A Man Called Ove, I think that's how you pronounce it, by Fredrik Backman. I really, really loved that book, but then I decided to pick up Beartown just because it's the same author. And I did not think I was really gonna like enjoy it that much because it is about hockey. It's about a hockey town. I'm not the biggest sports person. I don't know anything about hockey. So I wasn't expecting a lot when I went into it, but I was like, I know I like this author's other books, so why not give it a try? And this book absolutely blew me away. Like, I love the way that Fredrik Backman tells his stories and creates his characters and really makes you feel so connected to everybody. Like, his writing, I just really, really love, and this story touched me so deeply in ways that I was not expecting. I was like, oh, we're just gonna read like a little book about these kids like in a hockey town. Oh, it's gonna be so cute. No. This book is like heartbreaking, but like so good at the same time. There are a lot of like different storylines that I was not expecting going into this one, but it just was absolutely fantastic. The rest of the series, Us Against You, I think I gave 4 stars, and then The Winners, I was really disappointed by. I gave The Winners 3 stars, I think, because I feel like it just didn't have that same like feel to it that made me love this one so much. I don't know how to explain it. It just kind of like, it felt like it went on for too long and didn't really do the story justice, but maybe that's just me. But this first book will always hold a special place in my heart and will always be a 5-star for me. I love all the characters in this book. I love the story in this book, and it's just so powerful. I'm a little scared to talk about the next one. This is a book that who you are before you read this book is not going to be the same person as who you are after you read this book, and I'm sure you guys have seen it everywhere. Of course, It's a Little Life, and I know that you're probably tired, especially if you haven't read this book. I'm sure you're probably tired of people saying like, this was a 5-star, this book was so good, but I would not recommend it to anybody. But really, you have to realize, like, if you're gonna read this book, you are in for like how many pages? Like 700 pages, 800 pages of pain and heartbreak and sadness, and it's not good for your mental health. Like, if you're in a bad mental space, don't read this book. Like, straight up, period. Don't read this book if you are in a bad mental space. If your mental health is not in a good spot, don't read it, okay? If you do decide to read it, look up the trigger warnings, because there is a lot. Like, this is a story about friendship, and very, very sweet and very tender, lasting friendship, but it's also a story about the horrible things that people do to other people, and one person in particular experiencing years of pain, years of trauma, and it's really hard. is really sad to read about. So definitely, like I said, if you are not in a good mental space, just do not read this book, like at all, period. Don't read it. But am I crazy for saying that I have this like strong desire to reread this book for some reason? Like recently it's just been on my mind a lot, and I'm like, I want to read it again. I want to have my heart broken. I want to have my heart ripped out and stomped on again. I couldn't tell you why. I don't know. But it's a beautifully written story. A very powerful story. It will make you sob. And that's why I love it. The next book is one that I did not expect to love as much as I did, and that is Call Me By Your Name. This is, like I said, one of my all-time favorite top tier books. I understand why it's controversial. I understand why people don't like it, but this is a book that, like, when I finished it, I was like, I want to live in this book. You know that feeling where you're like, I don't ever want to leave this world. I want to live in it. I want to live with these characters and the life that they're experiencing. I think it's absolutely beautifully written, and I feel like Elio as a character is so like real and so raw. Like a lot of his thought processes and the actions and the things that he does, it's like just so real. Like I feel like a lot of times with fictional characters, like they kind of have this like polished feel to them. I don't know if that's the right word, where it's just like, you know, everything that they do makes sense, and how do I explain this? Like things just work out perfectly. They come together perfectly, but they're not. I'm having a really hard time trying to explain what I'm trying to say. Like it's not often in books that you get to see the main character be so real and show like the weird parts of being a human and like the ugly parts of being a human. Not like ugly as in like bad, but just like weird. You know, like the things that nobody ever talks about, but everybody does. Or just like the deep feelings in your head that you're like, oh, that's weird. Normal people don't think like that. But like Elio, like he gets it. He does some weird stuff. And I love him for that. This is just one of those stories that I love the characters. I love the way that it's written. And these characters will always be with me. Like I will never ever forget this story or the characters. And this is one that I do want to reread. I want to get a second copy and annotate it and then just have like 2 copies on my shelf. But that's that. Okay, this next book isn't necessarily like a favorite of mine. I don't think I gave it 5 stars. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, but it is a book that the story has stuck with me. The characters particularly have stuck with me. And it's just one of those books that I remember reading and thinking like, this is the kind of book that makes you fall in love with reading or reminds you why you love reading so much. And it's a very popular one. It is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This is one of like few fiction books that I've annotated when I haven't been expecting to annotate it. Like I said, I did give it 4.5 stars when I initially read it. I wonder if it would be higher if I went back and reread it, because like I said, this is a story that has never left my mind, and I think the writing is absolutely beautiful. And just the way that you get to connect to the characters and experience the characters and experience their life, and just the way that it's written and pulls you right in, like I said, is one of those books that can remind you why you love reading so much. Or if you are someone who's never really been big into reading, like this is a book that could make you fall in love with reading. And for that, I really, really love it. The next one is one of my favorite sci-fi books ever. You can notice behind me, it's missing on the shelf, and that is Project Hail Mary. This is another one that I went in not expecting much. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was just like, oh, it's a sci-fi book. Like, it'll be fun. It'll be cool. It takes place in space. Like, I'll really enjoy it. But, like, the emotional impact that this book had on me, this book almost made me cry. Like, if you told me before I read this book and before I knew what I was getting myself into, if you said, this book might make you cry, I would be like, what are you talking about? How is a sci-fi book gonna make me cry? My favorite alien ever that I've ever read about or just like experienced in a fictional way. Well, not that I've experienced an alien in a non-fictional way, but like that would be cool. But just my favorite fictional alien ever to exist is in this book, and I love him so much, and I will always think about him. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give things away, but this book did almost make me cry, and then it made me really happy at the end, and I just love it with all of my heart. And the very last one is a more recent one, and it is a romance, which is surprising because I never really used to read romance. I would kind of dabble in it, but I never really found any romance that I felt very, very strongly about until I read The 7-Year Slip. I love the characters in this so much. I love the magical realism within the storyline, and this is another one of those stories where it's like the characters just feel so real. The love that they have together, their relationship just feels so real and so authentic. It feels like I'm reading about real people, and that is why this book has stuck with me for so long. Now, to this day, like anytime I have anything lemon flavored or just anything with lemons, I'm just brought back to this book and the characters and their story. And I just think that it's like a really well crafted romance. Once again, like they just feel like real people with a real relationship and experiencing real things. And I really, really love when a book does that. A fiction book makes you feel like you're reading about real characters, and you kind of have to stop and remind yourself that these people don't exist. But in my brain, they will always be there. In my heart, they will always be there, and I'm so grateful that this book exists. So those were 10 books that for me are top tier, will not accept any criticism on. These books did change my life. They did change like the trajectory of my reading career. I don't know if that's the right word, but like they will always live in my head. I will never forget these books. They are top tier for me and some of my favorite books in the absolute entire world. So thank you so much for watching. I just wanted to spread some positivity for today. I love to watch other people talk about books that they love, and I love to talk about the books that I love, clearly. So thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you guys next time.